Just, you are going to be called to speak. Think of what you are doing that's making you nervous. So, what I might be doing is I might be twisting my fist, right? I might be doing this. Or I might be folding my hands close to my body, right? Or I might be just dangling or moving my legs, right? So whatever you're doing, I might be taking shallow breaths, right? Panting. So you need to identify for yourself what you are doing, which is contributing to your nervousness, and you'll only know, right? So when you're sitting there, you are going to be called. Just let it run through your mind. What am I doing? So once you identify what you're doing, then you need to work on it. So if you see that now you're folding your arms like this and you're getting like, as if you're feeling cold or something, then you need to put your arms down. Right? If you're clenching your fists, then open them. Right? One thing that you mustn't do also is don't put one leg above the other, because what then happens after a while when you're sitting and waiting is the bottom leg gets stiff. So when you stand up, it won't support your body. Right? So you need to identify what is it that you are doing when you're nervous. If you're going to speak, you are nervous, right? Now just identify, what am I doing? And once you identify, then work on it. So if you're breathing shallowly, take deep breaths. Right? And then if you get clenching your fist, then just dangle them, loosen them. Right? But what you'll notice is after a few minutes, you've gone back to that bad habit of yours. After a few minutes, you've gone back there. After a few minutes, you've gone back there. Work on it again. Work on it again. Then consciously, you're working on what the problem is. And then you'll overcome it. Okay? Simple solution. Right. Now, we won't show you how to kill the butterflies that you have. But what we will show you in this presentation is how to make them fly in formation. In other words, everyone is nervous. But now what you need to do is now get control of that nervousness. Make it from negative nervousness into positive nervousness. Right? And that's what we need to do. So we need to know how to control the nerves. Now we know that we are nervous. We know what's causing the nervousness. What must we do to control it? So I like to call it the A, B, C, and D. A, B, C, and D. Right? And the form in which I'm presenting it, this A, B, C, D, we're going to be discussing that also just now when we're going to be preparing the contents of our presentation. So A is the attitude. So when you come to speak, you must appear to be confident. Even though you are scared, the audience doesn't know that you are scared. They don't know you're scared. And when you go to make a presentation, the audience actually wants you to succeed. Isn't that so? If you are sitting here, the first day when I came, and I was introduced that I'm going to do public speaking presentation to you. Now, what's going through your mind? That I must fail or I must succeed? I must succeed. That's what the audience have got in their mind. As far as they are concerned, because I have come here, so I must be confident. So even though I might be nervous, why should I show it to you? So if I come very confidently, come onto the stage and stand here and say, right, so that's the appearance you give, the positive vibes that you put out. Right, so you must act that attitude. Right, so one is that attitude you must have. Secondly, breathe to the belly. So you need to take deep breaths, right? That's what I mentioned to you earlier. And that will result in D, we'll come to that now, center to connect. So what you need to do is if there's a stage, come to the center of the stage, stand as close to the audience as possible, even if it's a big stage now, you don't go and stand in the back, right? So come as close to the audience, center, and just look them in the eye, or look directly in front, right? So you've got that attitude, deep breath, center, look there, right? And the fourth thing is drop your voice to the diaphragm. So when you're speaking, now when you take deep breaths, when you're going to be talking, now after a while you'll get used to it. It's difficult now, I'm standing here, I must take a deep breath, and then I must talk. But after a while, it becomes natural. So instead of breathing shallowly, you start breathing slowly, more deeply. And drop voice to the diaphragm. So then when you're talking, it's not that shrill voice that's coming out from there. When the more breath we have, the more oxygen we have, then the voice comes out from the diaphragm muscle by the stomach. So our voice comes out projected loudly as well. Right, so that is the ABCD. So if you want to control your nerves, firstly, we're all nervous. So try and make it positive nervousness. Secondly, what is making me nervous? Think to yourself, what's making me nervous? I must now work on it. Thirdly, A, B, C, and D. So just remember A, B, C, and D, and then you'll be able to make progress. Okay, so what we've done so far. We've done public speaking from Islamic perspective, but we're going to be covering Islamic perspective throughout our presentation, overcoming nervousness. Now, framework formation. Now we're looking at the structure of your speech. As I told you, public speaking has two parts, contents and presentation. Contents is what you say. That's what we're going to be dealing. Now, what you say, you have to prepare what you have to say. So we're going to go over now in the next hour or so, how do you prepare what you're going to say, right? And there's two parts to it. What's an acronym? Okay, it's the short form of something. Similar to abbreviation, right? So it's a short form of something. You've got a presentation. What you want to do is you don't want to carry along a whole lot of notes. You don't want the notes. And now when you're making the presentation, now you're going through your notes. You don't want that, right? I could have done that because everything I'm saying there is here. I could have done that, stood here with these notes. It looks very unprofessional, right? So one of the things to assist me is acronyms. So I will look to shorten my whole presentation in point form to remind me of what I have to say. So in business, you probably have come across this, the acronym SMART. You heard of that? SMART? Okay, we'll come back to SMART in a moment. There's three different types of frameworks that public speakers use. One is acronym, the other is the visual model. So I just written there the art of public speaking. But say if I wanted, and I'll give you examples later. Now, in school we learned about mind maps. For essays or for debating, we have mind maps. So what's a mind map? Mind map is really, if we start off with a circle and say that's our topic, we start off public speaking. Now, what am I going to discuss in public speaking? I'm going to be discussing public speaking from an Islamic perspective. So I'll draw one line, Islamic perspective. Under Islamic perspective, what I'm going to talk about? I'm going to talk about Quranic verses. So one line goes up, Quranic verse. Another line coming down, hadith. The Quranic verse, then I can have verse and chapter, verse and chapter, verse and chapter. So that's a mind map. So the entire presentation of mine, the 4-day presentation, I could put it on one mind map, which would be about this size. The entire presentation. And I could speak to you without even looking at the PowerPoint. Right? It can be done. That is what the visual model is. Right? And the third one is alliteration. What is meant by alliteration? Same letters, right? Correct? Same letters. So, www. I just made it into what, why, where, who, which. But you'll notice in the presentation of mine, there's a number of times I use acronym and number of times I use alliteration. Now let's just think back of of what slides you've seen already. Give me an example of alliteration. Also could be different letters of the alphabet. So give me an example of something that I had put up just now. F. Yes, the fears. So that's alliteration. Anyone else? Just 2 slides before this we had that. How do you overcome your fear? A, B, C, D. So A, B, C, D is also part of the framework formation. See, so you don't have to by heart it. You don't have to have notes. In your mind, if you know when I'm talking of overcoming fear, A, B, C, D. Right? Or even if you have a crib card, those cards to remind us, even there you can just have A, B, C, D and what A, B, C, D stands for, that's all. Right, so now this is how you prepare your speeches. right? But I'll give you plenty of examples. Now, acronym, I was doing research the other day, and I wanted to know how did they start off with this word or the acronym SMART. 1981, there was a management review, and for the first time in the world, someone used this acronym SMART, and since then it's been used throughout the world. So, S is specific. You must be specific. See, this is just give you an example. In management, in corporate world, if we want to do an appraisal of someone, so then we use the SMART model. So we have to be specific. So these are your targets for the year, right? So you have to put it down. Secondly, measurable. Now, if I want to appraise you at the end of the year to see whether you met your targets, I must be able to measure it, right? Thirdly, achievable. Is it achievable or not? I can't set targets that are unachievable and you're wasting your time. Fourthly, is it realistic or relevant? And fifthly, it must be time bound. So that's an example of an acronym. So you, in your speeches, what you must do, you have to prepare your speech and write it down. Once you've written your speech down, then you see what are the main points you're making. So there might be 5 main points. So once you've got the main points, then you can play around with this. You can do fancy stuff, work out in your mind, how can I make it into an acronym? Now, if there's 5, now here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time related. So whatever your topics are, you've got 5 points, and give each one a letter to begin with, and you can play around with it. Right? There's no hard and fast rules. But at the end of the day, it must make sense to you. So this is now what I'm going to speak on in that entire speech. And that's all you need. Just keep one card, put that. You don't need any notes, you don't need PowerPoint, nothing. Right, so this I just gave you as an example. But there's plenty of examples in the balance of my presentation. Okay, we're still dealing with contents. Now, every good speech has to have 3 things, and all of us know that. There has to be an opening, there has to be a body, and there has to be a conclusion, like assignments we normally write, right? However, in public speaking, on the opening side, you have to capture the audience's attention. When you're opening, you must be able to draw their attention, and it must lead you into the speech. Prophet ﷺ, what was his opening? What was his opening in the farewell speech? Yes, after praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then what was the first thing he said? Lend me your ears, right? So that is capturing the attention of the audience. And lend me your ears, and then that leads into what the Prophet ﷺ said, leads into the speech topic, right? Then secondly, the body. In the body, you'll have a main point. And then in that main point, you have a sub-point and maybe a further sub-point. So, public speaking from an Islamic perspective. So what was the main point? Public speaking from an Islamic perspective. What was the sub-point? There's going to be Quranic verses and there's going to be a hadith. And the supporting material. So which were those Quranic verses? Verse, chapter, verse, chapter, verse, chapter. And the hadith, what were they? So that's the one point. So in the body, you could have, normally you have about 3 to 5 points. Don't have too many more points because then it becomes unmanageable. So in your speech for 45 to 90 minutes, have about 3 to 5 points, that's all. When a khatib, when a maulana, when a sheikh gives a talk on Friday, if you follow his talk, there's one topic and there's just about 3 or 4 points, that's all, right? But in those points, then he's got sub-points and supporting material. So that's what you need to do. Thirdly, the conclusion. Then you have to review, in each one we're going to be discussing in turn in a moment. Review whatever you've discussed and give them a summary and call them to action. They must do something, right? So this is in very basic form what the format of the speech should be. Now we're going to discuss each one in turn. The beginning. A, B, C, D. So what's that? That's one of the formats that we discussed. Now there's another way of remembering the beginning. And we're going to be discussing each one in turn. A is your audience. And also attention. attention of your audience. B is the benefits to your audience. C is the credentials, the person who's speaking, what's his credentials. And D, the direction or destination. What are you going to be speaking about? Where you want to take your listeners. So in the beginning, you have to have A, B, C, D. And we'll spend some time on each one now. So A, audience or your attendees. That's the first part we're going to discuss. And the second part is how do you grab their attention. So, again, this is an example of alliteration. A. Now we need to be aware of, now we're talking of the audience, we need to be aware of three things with regard to the audience or the attendees. Firstly, we need to know who's there, what's their attitude to what I'm going to talk about now, and what do they know about my topic, right? And we'll go in detail with each one, and I'll give you examples as well. So, attendees or the audience, be aware of them. Now, what should you know about them? You are preparing a speech. You've written down whatever your speech is, but what do you know about your listeners? What do you know about your audience?
Their age, their knowledge, their interests.
Their knowledge of your topic, their interest in your topic, their age. What else should you know? Their educational background. Sorry? Their beliefs, right? Especially if you're a da'i, you need to know what their beliefs are. Yes? What else? Anyone else? Okay. Sometimes you ask the person who is going to be coming to your function, what are your interests? You have to do homework with regard to your attendees. Otherwise, you're going to fail. Definitely you're going to fail. Because you can have a fantastic speech, but if you're not speaking to your audience, you're wasting your time. Isn't that so? So what are the things that we look at? And how do you do it? I'll give you examples. Their experience in what you are talking, their education, job or professional background, age, gender, ethnic background, cultural differences. These are just some of the things. Do your listeners share common interests? What's their relationship to one another? Do they share common interests? And what's their relationship to one another? What recent experiences, if any, have they had that could affect their readiness to accept your argument? Right? So you're a da'i. You're going to be speaking to them about Islam. What's their experience? Is it the first time that they ever being presented with Islam? Or have they come regularly before to your talks, but they're still not Muslims? Or are they already Muslims? Or are they Muslims, but they're skeptical about Islam? So you need to know about what's their recent experiences. I'll give you an example. It's always important to go to a presentation, to the presentation before yours. So if you are speaking, but someone else is speaking before you, it's important to be present for the presentation. Don't just come last minute, few minutes before your presentation and commence. On one occasion, there was a person who was invited to speak to to staff in a company. So all the people were there, the employees were there. So this person came. The first person had already spoken. He wasn't present when that person spoke, and then he stood up and he gave a fantastic speech in his mind. But it was not really accepted by the audience. They were disinterested in what he was saying. And yet that same speech, when he gave at other companies, people were very receptive to it. So it troubled him. So at the end of his speech, he asked the MC, what was wrong with these staff? Why weren't they paying proper attention? He said, well, just before your speech, the managing director of that company gave them a talk. And it was about the financial problems that the company was facing. And they were talking about possible retrenchment of staff, firing of staff. Right? So they listening that they might lose their jobs. So they finish. And then you come. and you're prepared, right? Everything you're ready. Fantastic presentation. Waste of time. Why? They are obviously, what's their recent experiences? This is taking it a little to its extreme, but that's the point I was making previously also. You must come early. If other people are speaking, try and be present when they're speaking. What will your listeners expect from you? Do they have high expectations you may not be able to fulfill? Are their expectations realistic? And are you prepared in any case to address those expectations? So what do they expect from you? You're going to speak. What do they expect from you? Have they got unrealistic expectations from you or not? Are you going to be meeting their expectations? So you need to know these things. And if you know these things, then you'll be prepared. You must try and find out as much as possible about your audience. If it's possible for you to do your homework before the presentation, do as much homework as possible. I'll give you an example of some of the things that I do. I was going to cover it in my other slide, but I can discuss it now. And if you don't have a chance before the presentation to find out about your audience, find out in the beginning of your lecture. Find out in the beginning of the lecture. All those who have not heard about Islam before, please raise your hands. People raise their hands. All those who are of the Christian faith, raise your hand. Nothing wrong in asking that. Sorry? Doesn't matter, but the majority of them won't. I was giving a talk once on relationships between husband and wife. And I went there, and I didn't really know this audience, and I didn't have an opportunity to do my homework on them. So as soon as I went there, the first thing I asked, they were ladies, the first thing I asked them is, how many of you are married? So about 1/3 of the hands went up. And I asked, who's not married? So 2/3 of the hands went up. So I know, as far as my approach to them regarding conflict in marriage, it might not relate to 2/3 of them. It will relate to 1/3 of them. Right? I wouldn't have known had I not asked the questions. So sometimes you don't know. You're not prepared. You haven't had the opportunity to find out about your audience. Then on the day, nothing wrong. Ask them questions. And one of the things we're going to be discussing in a moment is how to grab their attention. One of the ways to grab their attention is to ask questions. Because when you're starting, if you start with a question, they're immediately going to respond. Right? So actually it's killing two birds with one stone. Because you're finding out about your audience and you are building up the expectations. Right, let's do something different now. Take a deep breath. Deep breath and count 5 and breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In 5 breaths you must breathe out, or 5 counts. Right, breathe in, deep breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more time. Deep breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, one more thing you want to be doing. Now, I want you to take your hands. Right. But this time when you breathe, breathe through your mouths. Right. Deep, breathe through your mouths and deeply, so then the air must go right into your stomach. And at the same time, I want you to move your hands. I want action. Right. Let's do that. Yes, carry on, do it. No. Slowly, slowly. Okay, sit down. Okay, take a seat. How do you feel in your body? Your brain? Feeling a little bit spinning and a little bit dazed. Okay. Right, that was just to wake you up. Alhamdulillah. Okay. What do you do to find out these things? I'll come back to that. Let's just finish the 3 A's. Be aware of the audience attitude. Acknowledge audience attitudes, their biases, interests, concerns. If these people are antagonistic against Islam, then you need to know about it before you stand and speak to them, right? And quite often in the case of debates, Muslims against non-Muslims, sometimes you will get the other group antagonistic against Islam and so forth. So you need to know about these things, right? Is your audience likely to be friendly or hostile towards your point of view? You've got a point of view. If you know for a fact that that area that I'm going to in America, there was that one area, that one priest, and he wanted to burn all the Bible, all the Qurans. Remember that? He wanted to burn the Qurans, right? Now say if you're going to his town, if you're going to his church to give a talk, now you know whether he's hostile or not, right, towards you. But you need to do your homework and find out about that person. If they hold positive views about your topic and your messages, you'll be focusing chiefly on reinforcing those views and reciting the benefits your listeners will receive. Now say, you know the audience, they are positive towards what you are saying. So when you are saying what you are saying, you're just reinforcing what's in their minds, right? And on the other hand, if they hold negative views, you will have to anticipate the objections, prepare your responses. You might start with points to get agreement from your audience before moving to the more controversial parts of the presentation. Top speakers, debaters, politicians all do this. If they've got a point of view that's different from yours, the first thing they want to do is show you the similarities between what your point of view is and theirs. Sheikh Ahmed Deedat always used to do that. Quite often when he used to start his talk, and he's got Christians who are, lots of them were anti-Muslim, right? So the first thing he will tell them, one of the first things he will tell them is that there's a lot of similarities between us and you. We believe in Jesus Christ, and we believe that he was one of the mightiest messengers of God Almighty. We believe in the miraculous birth of Jesus. And we believe also in his mother, that she was chaste. 3 or 4 things. So immediately, the similarities between the Muslims and the Christians is put right up there, right in the beginning. So in that way, you win them over slightly, and then you can give them the, not negative side, but your point of view. So you might start with the points to get agreement from your audience before moving on. Even in normal day-to-day life, if we got people working for us and we want to criticize them, don't start with criticism. When they're sitting in front of you, talk about the positive things that they've done in your organization. Because everyone has got some positives. Talk about the positive things and then tell him there's room for improvement here, there, and the other. Right, so in public speaking also. And be aware of the audience's familiarity with the topic. What do they already know? Address your listeners at the level of their existing knowledge. Okay, let's contextualize this. I was going to come and make a presentation to you. I didn't know who the audience was. I found out from Islamic Propagation Center, the officials, who's coming. They said there were 17 or 18 of you from Saudi Arabia, and there's few other groups in the country. So I wanted to know now, but what are y'all doing? So they said some of y'all are studying, some of y'all are working, etc. What's the object of you coming here to South Africa? So I had to find out a little about that. But to get more information about you, I came early on the first day. And then I sat with Sheikh on that, when was it, Saturday, when we were having lunch. So I came Saturday morning, and Saturday again I came after I was busy in a graduation at the institution. When I finished there, I came straight here for lunch. But just to talk to you, not so much for lunch, but just to talk to you, find out about you people. So about 4 of you were sitting around the table, you were there as well. Right. And what I was asking you, where do you come from? What are you doing? What are you doing here? Has anyone spoken to you on public speaking? Didn't I ask you that? Right. And then you told me that there's 2 people. You gave me the name of that person as well. You gave me his website. I asked you now, what did they speak to you about? Did they speak to you from the Islamic perspective? These are the things that I want to speak. You said, no, that's going to be of value to you. Right. So that's doing your homework. Right. Then on the first day of the presentation, my presentation, Monday morning, I was here quite early. Then I said to the Sheikh, I asked him, where you're from? He said, I'm from Jamiatul Ulama, KZN. What are you doing? And he says that he was a revert to Islam, and he is propagating Islam on the radio stations. So I asked, okay, now tell me more about that. So he started telling me more about that, what you studied. I even made some suggestions to him what he can study going forward. So I got an idea where he came from. And then I spoke to you and a few of your colleagues. And you said you're from Abu Dhabi. So I asked you what that is about. Right, and there's two sheikhs there. I know who you are. So this is what you have to do. You do it diplomatically, but that is how you find out about the people. So this is now an example of people I did not know at all. But what would I normally do? I do a lot of presentations in schools that care for the disabled, and for parents who've got disabled children, and for the therapists and medical profession and so forth. So the school, I'll give you one example of one school that I went to for the disabled. These kids are all mentally normal but physically disabled. Some of them are on wheelchairs, some of them have got very, very bad medical conditions. In any case, one presentation, just give you an idea of the amount of preparations public speakers do. And let me tell you, how much time do you think a public speaker spends on preparing for his topic? This presentation that I'm doing to you now, in these 4 days, I'm going to be doing to you a 3 days presentation. Where did I start? I started about 3 years ago. I didn't know I was going to make a presentation here to you now until about a week ago. But when did it start? When did I start my work on public speaking? About 3 years ago. How many books I read on public speaking? Maybe about 10 or 15. How many from the Quranic perspective or Sharia side? Maybe another 8 or 10 websites, 30, 40, wrote the books, etc. So that is all leading up to this presentation. This particular PowerPoint presentation, I've made about 10, 15 times before, different audiences, but you customize it for different audiences, but for your presentation. So with all that background,